trying to think of what I'm going to do for Mr. Powell's video project.
Well, you're doing it wrong because you're thinking inside the box. You got to think outside the box.
Oh yeah, you're right. Before the Industrial Revolution began and there was a factory system, to get wool and yarn to make clothing, people had to do, or usually women had to do, the putting out system. The first step of the putting out system would be to get your sheep here and to save your sheep, and you would get all the yarn, or the the wool off of the sheep, and once the women were done shaving their sheep, they would put their wool inside a bundle or like a bag, and they would go down the street or wherever to their friend's house or to the next woman's house, and they would put their bag of wool on the second part, or the second step of the putting out system, was for the other neighbor or person to take the wool, and they would go in, and it was my job to turn it into yarn, which I'm gonna go do. Now that I've turned my wool into yarn, the third step of the putting out system will begin. Ended. Is it ended? The third part of the putting out system will be that the yarn will be taken and woven into a loom and create a blanket like this that will be later dyed in the fourth step. The fourth step of the putting out system will be that the cloth that came all the way from the sheep, and the final step would be that it will be dyed into a color that would later be used to be sold and turned into clothing that we would give to the merchant. Here you go, merchant. Thank you. The cloth that was given to the merchants to sell would be used to create clothing that, clothing like this, that the ladies and people would buy from the merchant. The putting out system took a very long time, which that time was changed when the Industrial Revolution happened by increasing how much cloth and how much material was made in a faster, more efficient time. Once the Industrial Revolution began, the biggest change was in how fabric and cloth was made. We went from the putting out system of about 5 different steps of women doing different things with cloth and slowly putting it house to house, to moving the whole process to be in one building with the different machines and an assembly line. It was factory style, but the conditions were very terrible. People would get dirt all over their face and they would cut themselves and get blood everywhere. It was very dangerous. The conditions were hot and stuffy, and it was just terrible. The hours were awful. Women and children at very young ages, we worked for about 12 to 15 hours, and we would get about $2, which is very low for the work that we were doing and for the danger that we were putting our bodies in. It was just very difficult to work in these factories, and but it was a success in the fact that how much cloth and clothing was made in such short periods of time, considering how much longer it took using the putting out. People didn't know how bad the working conditions were for children. because no one had really shown them. So a man by the name of Lewis Heine took pictures of the conditions and the work that these kids had to do. And when people began to see these in the newspapers, they became very upset, and it went to Supreme Court. And now that's why we do have child labor laws today that state that you have to be the age of 16 before you can work. So this doesn't happen.
Invention was taking the soil from fertile lands and moving it to a non-fertile land for better crop growth. And many patents were also put in place during this time, and one of them includes Jeffrey Tull's the seed drill.
During the Industrial Revolution, the farmers would do crop rotation, which was rotating the crops throughout the field and putting in different crops like during different times of the year so that the soil would have time to rest and that it would have time to, refertilize, and so that they wouldn't overuse the soil. For example, this soil over here was obviously overused, and they need to let it rest so that it can, get healthy again so that we can start to grow crops on it again. And we just like to rotate the crops throughout the field so that they turn out better.
Okay, so this is a canal. A canal is a man-made waterway used to connect rivers for transportation usages. The canal was also a primary introduction of the steam engine, which gradually increased the speed of transportation.
James Watts was the man who invented the steam engine, also known as the train. The train invention was a huge part of the Industrial Revolution. It caused for goods to be able to ship farther distances in a much more faster and easier and just more efficient way of transporting goods. It was powered by coal and steam, and it just changed the way that goods were transported along with the steamship.
You say you want a revolution.